Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at the question of when does Daredevil Born Again Season 2 fit in the overall MCU timeline? It's getting really busy at this portion of the timeline, so there's lots to discuss. Let's dive right in and see what we can find out. So we've entered a new month, and that means we have a new contest. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And that means we need to announce our January winner, who is Drive a Sandwich, making this hilarious comment that, yes, I did drop a 6-7 during the Doomsday X-Men trailer breakdown. So, Drive a Sandwich, go to the About section of my channel, and reach out to me via Discord or email. I'll get your prize right away. We also have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out. Plus, hang around to the end of the video, and I'll talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord, and I will point out this weekend's watch is going to be Avengers Endgame. Should be a lot of fun. So we'll start by looking at the Phase 6 possible slate, and as usual, everything in red is a Marvel movie, yellow is a Marvel TV show, and blue is a Sony movie. So right now I have Daredevil Born Again Season 2 coming out on March 4th, 2026 because, well, Marvel told us it was coming out on March 4th, 2026, but obviously they have now changed that to March 24th. And I'm not really sure why they did that. I mean, Wonder Man was dropped all in one day, so I don't know why they had to move it back, but I'm pretty sure that is the time because on Disney Plus, they're also telling us March 24th. So if you have any idea why it was pushed back, let me know. But yeah, I'm going to update this to March 24th. And then after that, we'll get the Punisher special presentation, and eventually we'll get the rest of the slate. I'm kind of guessing on every date, other than obviously the movies. We know when those are happening. So all right, let's refresh ourselves with the Born Again Season 1 timeline. I'm not going through all of this. This is just to show you that I did lay everything out. But in particular, I want to mention that by the end of Episode 9, we are in April of 2027. Because remember, Bullseye escaped, Matt took a bullet for Fisk, and then Fisk declared martial law in the city. And if you go out to the wiki, they tell us it's not just April, but it's April 10th when that final episode of Season 1 occurs, and I totally agree. I think it is early to mid-April. So, let's also look at Wonder Man, and if you haven't seen Wonder Man, don't worry, no spoilers. I'm just pointing out the timeline, which they actually reveal from this video of Von Kovac, but really, what I want to pay attention to is over on the right. Notice they're saying, don't miss out on this week's features, and they have articles from April 1st and March 24th. So we know we're well into April for them to be able to show these articles, right? And then I won't discuss why. You can check out the video if you want to know more. But let's just say that we are in 2027 so that I don't give away anything from the show for those that haven't seen it yet. So, all right, Wonder Man is happening, for the most part, in spring of 2027. But one thing I didn't mention in my timeline breakdown is we can actually figure out when Trevor left Tallow. Remember, there he is with Morris, and Trevor was trying to play dead, right? Well, the entrance to Tallow only opens during Qingming Festival, and the Qingming Festival in 2027 is on April 5th. So that would mean that the door opened on April 5th, he hopped his flight to LA, and then the series takes off. So yeah, we are definitely in early April, right around the same time that all the craziness is happening in Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And then it's also important to look at how it fits in with Brave New World. They actually gave us a date on screen. It has been so long since they've done that, but now we know that Brave New World is in April of 2027. So to summarize, you have Daredevil Born Again Season 1 ending on April 10th, Wonder Man picking up right around that time frame, and Brave New World on April 16th. So that means that when Kingpin declared the curfew, starting at 8 p.m., and basically laid out martial law in all of New York, this was happening a few days before the craziness in Washington, D.C. with Red Hulk, which would probably explain why I'm going to bet that both President Ross and Val, of course the head of CIA, right, they were probably fine with someone taking an authoritarian standpoint in New York. They probably did not care one bit that Fisk was declaring martial law. They might have even liked it. Of course, then all hell broke loose in Washington with Red Hulk on April 16th. Craziness. So now the question is, where do we pick up with Season 2? Well, notice we get this footage of the task force hanging out with people like this old dude playing chess. Notice they have the AVTF logo on, and of course they have the Punisher logo as well. That is craziness, right? So then we see the task force hanging out with this little kid. I think that's the same lady high-fiving him. And then we got these people here walking past this task force member. They seem all happy, right? And behind them is a Fisk poster making something, maybe making us safe. And then finally we have these kids hanging out by the Fisk poster. So I will point out, everybody seems to be wearing warm weather clothing, coats and such. That would make sense for an April time frame in New York. But also, you got to wonder, Is this legit that all these people are this happy about the task force, or is this maybe a propaganda video that Fisk put together? That's my guess, honestly, because elsewhere in the trailer, we see people aren't real happy with the task force. I mean, look at some of these posters. This one says no fear. This one says city without fear. This one says Fisk stop. This one has a Statue of Liberty image, which honestly looks like something Muse would have drawn. I wonder if Muse is going to come back or if people are inspired by Muse's work. And then who is this dude? I don't know what's going on there. Maybe he was someone killed accidentally by the task force when they were tracking down a vigilante. So yeah, I have a feeling the public isn't real happy. And speaking of Muse's influence, somebody put together this TV spot and it looks definitely like something Muse would have done, basically mocking Kingpin, kind of making him look like a thug, or also look like Max Headroom to some extent. So yeah, who knows what's going on here, but somebody definitely does not like what the Kingpin is doing. All right, here we see the task force getting very aggressive, coming out with guns blazing. Here we see them actually ramming a van into another vehicle. So maybe that one dude whose face was on the poster got killed during one of these missions. And then we see someone doing this raid on a home. It doesn't look like the task force because they're not wearing the task force uniforms. But I will also point out, look at the bushes and the tree. Definitely looks like, an April time frame again. And then we also see Buck Cashman and Daniel Blake are back again. I love them saying saw or shovel. I don't even want to know why they need those. But I'm betting a dead body is inside this trunk. But I'll point out one last time to look at the tree in the background. Definitely looks like April time frame. Leaves starting to grow back on the tree, etc. So I definitely think we're picking up relatively soon after season 1. And then speaking of Daniel Blake, here we see him with Kingpin. Looks like, again, this father-son relationship between the two of them. Going to be interesting to see if Blake grows a spine, though, and decides to, start working against Kingpin before the series is done. And then we get the room full of cages returning. In fact, there's a ton of people in those cages, and these guards look like they are making sure those people do not escape. And I wonder if that's because, remember, the Punisher did escape from these cages at the end of last season, but maybe he didn't, free everybody else? Or maybe they got brand new people and threw them in the cages. But I'm kind of betting that Jack and others are still there, or they would have definitely ratted out the Kingpin. And then it looks like Daredevil is in the room full of cages, and he's taking on the task force because he throws his billy club across the room, and yeah, this guy gets it in the nose. That did not look pleasant. But maybe Daredevil is rescuing everyone from the cages? And then we also see the task force going after Josie's bar. Oh man, poor Josie's bar. Why is it always getting shot up? So here we see the task force shooting at Daredevil, and here again they're trying to light him up, but they're not going to hit him, guys. Give it up. You're not going to hit Daredevil. But I wonder if the reason they're attacking Josie's bar is because, remember, at the end of last season, that's the location they chose for this resistance group to start forming and meeting. So maybe the task force figures that out and comes after them. But good news for Matt, he's not the only defender in the fight, because this looks like he's maybe at a church here, potentially, by those stained glass windows on the right. But look who's coming in. We know those boots from a mile away, right? That is Jessica Jones, just as spunky as ever. I love her saying, "I hope you can walk, because I'm not carrying you." And he looks up like, am I glad to see her or not? Oh my goodness, so happy Jessica is returning. And then I love this shot where she's whacking this task force member upside the head with a metal door. He goes flying across the room, and there again, that's the logo. And she's like, bring me more, bring me more. And then this is great. This is from Entertainment Weekly, and it's definitely showing us that she will be teaming up with Daredevil in costume. At least he'll be in costume. Her costume is jeans and a leather jacket, which is awesome. So yeah, cannot wait to have her back again. And in fact, let's look quickly at her timeline. So this is a summary of all the Netflix shows and then how they fit in with the main MCU over there on the left. So Jessica Jones series runs from March to April of 2015 all the way up to April to May of 2018, right before the blip. Literally right before the blip. And in fact, you might remember at the end of her series finale, she's looking at this newspaper article telling her she's a bona fide hero, which is not a term she likes to be referred to. But instead, she closes up Alias investigations for the last time, at least for her, because she hands the keys over to Malcolm, telling him don't screw it up. And then she heads out, getting a ticket actually to El Paso, Texas, one-way notice. But then we get one last appearance by Kilgrave as he's haunting her mind, saying, you're right to give in, give up. It's someone else's job now. and that's enough to tick her off. No one tells Jessica what to do, so she turns around and walks back into the city as they're playing the song, "You Tell Them to Go When You Wish They Would Stay." So yeah, really curious to see how things pick up with her. Did she get blipped? What's she been up to? I really hope they bring us up to speed on the last several years of her life. All right, so now let's talk about Karen and Matt. You might remember at the end of season 1, they were kind of having a moment together. Not really a romantic moment, but definitely a tender heart-to-heart. Well, now it looks like that's moving to romance because they're turning on the record player. Karen's there in his apartment. He's laying on the bed, smiling. I love that. And then maybe here he's helping her with some combat moves, learning self-defense perhaps. It's really hard to tell for sure. Let me know your thoughts on that. But definitely they move into dancing. But a couple of things to talk about here. First of all, notice this headless mannequin. I'm bringing that up because I'm going to mention it later to show that a second scene is happening in his room. But yeah, we can't not talk about the giant hole in the wall. What is going on there? Can't wait to find out what's going on. Then we see them, again, dancing and kind of moving in for a kiss. But then we see the screen getting smaller, and they did this in first season as well, to show basically that Matt is honing his senses to try to detect something going on. Well, it's not too hard to detect what's happening. It's a giant explosion. So did maybe somebody figure out that Matt is Daredevil, and that's why they're attacking his apartment? Because we see later in the trailer these task force members charging in, and then they get blown back, and notice over in the corner, there's that headless mannequin. So this is definitely in Matt's apartment, but it's not Matt there. It's Daredevil, and he is quite happy to be able to kick some butt. So yeah, really curious to find out what's going on here. Then we get this cool shot of Daredevil working with Karen Page. Notice that he's rocking the double Ds on his chest, just like in the comics. Of course, now he's wearing the black outfit, which is even cooler, but I love the fact that he's got the double Ds. So then we got this image from Entertainment Weekly showing us that Karen is definitely going undercover at some point. I mean, I would not have even recognized that was her, so that's really cool. Then what is up with Matt going missing? I wonder if that's somehow tied to them attacking his apartment. So yeah, maybe he's hiding out somewhere. Interesting. So then we see that Lily Taylor is playing Governor Marge McCaffrey. She's toasting Kingpin, so they seem to be getting along pretty well, right? And at this same event, we see Vanessa sitting down there with her drink. And in fact, this shot from Entertainment Weekly shows them all together. They're wearing the same outfits, so I'm imagining this is the same scene. And I don't know, it seems to look like they're getting along pretty well. I wondered if maybe Fisk doing that martial law was going to be an issue with the governor, but maybe not. Maybe she's just fine with everything he's doing. In fact, it seems the real foil for Kingpin during this season will be the mysterious Mr. Charles, played by Matthew Lillard. So awesome to see that dude back again. In fact, Entertainment Weekly showed this image of him just chilling on the chair, hand draped over the edge. He's slouching, and look at the Kingpin. And Vanessa, neither one are happy at all. They're sitting up straight, look pretty ticked off. So interesting that the biggest person standing in the way of the Kingpin might be Mr. Charles. But I will say he looks pretty happy in this shot, right? Dude is running the city the way he wants to, and he's loving every minute of it. In fact, he even jumps into the boxing ring. What on earth? And notice this dude's wearing a badge that says New York State Athletic Commission. So at least they're pretending like this event is official. Maybe it actually is. But yeah, Kingpin is definitely winning, as you can see. And I love that he has a Fisk belt on and Fisk gloves. I mean, hey, branding is everything, right? Branding is everything. All right, so then we see that Heather Glenn is returning. You might remember at the end of last season, she was appointed as the administration's commissioner of mental health. I think pretty much everybody on the Kingpin staff has mental health issues, including the Kingpin. And then speaking of people with mental health issues, we see Bullseye is returning in all his unhinged glory, getting this big ice cream shake. He seems happy now, right? But I'm wondering if he's staring at that cherry stem and saying, how many people could I kill with that? Probably just about every one of them. And then we see this image here where it looks like he got pounded on. And he's also got a new costume too, so that's pretty cool. And then the way they edited the trailer, it makes it look like Daredevil's reaching down to help him up. I don't know. I'm not so convinced about that. We'll have to wait and see. And then we see this massive explosion at the docks, right? But before the explosion, notice there's a big crane there. Well, there was because it gets blown up. But I'm guessing this is the same location that we saw back in season number 1, the docks, right? In fact, we learned that they were Red Hook, and he was going to build all this construction here, the Kingpin, and ultimately he was going to be able to use the site as a free port, bringing things illegally in and out of the city. So if we mention Red Hook, we got to bring up Foggy, right? So he shows up in the trailer looking a lot younger than he did in Born Again Season 1, because that's what he looked like there. In fact, he actually looks like maybe the Netflix Season number 1, the original Daredevil Season number 1. So that definitely a flashback at this point. Will he show up for real, though, or is he truly dead? That's the question of the hour. And in fact, we got this Entertainment Weekly article that talked about Eldon Henson returning as Foggy. Though the character remains 6 feet under, the loss continues to cast a shadow over the masked Daredevil. But then they go on to say, what about Punisher? Last time we saw him, he was escaping Fisk's secret prison, right, and set off into the unknown. And then Brad Winterbaum says, the less I say, the better. The Punisher TV special really does connect into the time and place that Daredevil Born Again Season 2 takes place. So good. That means they're all connected. And in fact, we do get this confirmation from Sana Amanat, the executive producer, that Frank Castle will not be appearing in Born Again Season 2, basically because of the special presentation. And then we got this encouraging news from John Bernthal himself when he said, around the same time as Brand New Day, there will also be this Punisher special that's coming out and that I think will be as high-octane Punisher as you've ever seen. I think what was really important to me and Destin and Tom is that we believe the Punisher could walk off the Spider-Man set and could walk onto this special set, and I do believe we achieved that. So that's really exciting news, but it is starting to make me wonder, is it possible the Punisher special presentation comes out after Brand New Day, just because of the way he was phrasing that? I don't know what the timing will be, but hopefully we'll learn more soon. All right, so now let's talk about where Born Again Season 2 will land in the timeline. This is the timeline for all of the entries that are showing up near the end of the timeline, and I could see Born Again sliding in either before Brave New World or after Brave New World. Of course, the bigger question might end up being, where are these other entries going to land? Where's the Punisher special, Brand New Day, and even Vision Quest? I mean, I think everything's going to land prior to the post-credit scene of the Thunderbolts, which is December of 2028, and I think that's when Doomsday is going to occur. But man, I'm so curious to see how all of this ends up fitting together. And it is worth noting that at least in regards to Daredevil Born Again Season 2, we're going to have to turn to this website that Marvel's been keeping up to date called the Complete MCU Timeline, and it's a season-by-season breakdown. So hopefully they will update this thing right when Daredevil Born Again Season 2 comes out, because I want to know where it lands in this timeline. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think about my guesses for where this all fits in the timeline? Where do you think Born Again Season 2 is going to land? And hey, while you're at it, let me know your thoughts on the Punisher special, Brand New Day, and even Vision Quest. Lots of exciting stuff to look forward to, and you know that I love to read and respond to all your comments. And don't forget, February contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook, and there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I promised I would talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord. Every day listed here at 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. We watch a different movie or show as we head towards the December 18, 2026 release of Doomsday. And again, the next one is going to be Avengers Endgame, and that is going to be a fun time. So we have 2,600 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.